Okay, in the last we have seen is how to create a web services and how to consume the web services using the different options. Uh, Consuming the web services using HTTP client connector and then web service SOAP client connector. Then so far we just created a web services using only web service server connector. We haven't exposed using the APIs using the API component, so that we'll see how we can expose the components using API. So why we need to go for the API component is that is one is comfort, one is the easy way to create the web services. We have many options. I will show you that. Uh, Apart from that, main reason is we can customize and we can logically group the endpoint URL. So whereas in earlier case, we don't have an option to customize endpoint URL. It have something like host name, some port, and then it would be WS/SOAP. Like that, your endpoint URL will be. We don't have an option to customize this other than this. I don't want something like WS/SOAP. I want something like app, something like contact service, something like I want to put it. So we can achieve these things with the customizing the endpoint URL. Customize endpoint URL. The other thing is we can logically group the multiple services. What happens is earlier, if you are deploying any services and the web services, whatever web services start shape has a web service server connector, and how many number of processes we deploy, it doesn't matter, all will be generating only one WSDL. But instead of that, we want to group logically. Maybe if I want to go some account services, all account services should be grouped. Let's say account service get inquiry, get account details, and create account, something like that. I want to group logically. When I go for contact details, again different things. So when I expose the services, all account details only one visual should be generated, and again shouldn't have the contact details related services should not be included. That is basically a logical grouping of services. Since we have an option of using customizing endpoint URL, basically we can achieve with the versioning as well. Versioning also can achieve. These are the main thing. Other than that, and the API component. Okay, API component is also a deployable component. And API component, what exactly mandatorily expecting is it should have the web services server connector processes. I mean, whatever we done earlier, it should have the web service server connector. That process should be deployed. Only thing is when client send a request, it comes to an API component. API component will route the request to the actual process, and it's not something like API component. It's not doing everything for exposing web services. Nothing is API component is doing. It just we can consider this as an one entry points or interface to connect to the web service server connector. But apart from the whatever the problems or hurdles we see in web service server connector, it can be easily resolvable with API component. But API component will expect both the components should be deployed, API component as well as web service server connector process. Then only your then only we will be able to use the API component. If none of the component is deployed, and whatever the component your endpoint URL that we're going to do, we will not able to see the response. And apart from that, in order to support the API component, in Atom management we have to change the API type to advanced. And one more thing is, I'll show you where to change it. So using this API component, what type of things can be done? We can expose a SOAP web service. We can expose a REST web service. We can expose a OData APIs. All these things can be possible. When you compare with these things, right? Web service server connector, you can expose the webs, but you don't have an option to expose the REST connectors. I think REST also you can achieve it because we did a query kind of a query parameters passing. Even we can pass a path parameters as well, but OData you cannot achieve. And when using a web service server connector, what we are able to do, you can even invoke the web services using simple, right? Where once you open any web service server connector, not this one, sorry. Means when I say simple, it means is using this URL also you are able to invoke your web services using HTTP client connector. But once you start using the API component, that option will be blocked. You cannot use simple option anymore. So these are the things. First, let me go and change whether the API component is configured to enable or not. First thing is atom management. Go to atom management. So select the atom that you want to deploy it. So this is the atom. Go for shared web server. So there here API component need to change it to intermediate to advanced. If you don't see this advanced option, then you need to enable the API component. If you don't enable the advanced component and you deploy API components and the other thing, those are not work. It won't work. So thing is you need to make these things to advanced and always save. It will ask for restart. Yes, you can just click on it. So this is the first step we done. So now authentication type we want to use basic, whatever you can use it. Fine. As of now we are not going to touch that one. Custom. One second. So earlier what options we have is basic, client certificate header, client certificate. It means none means when we are accessing the web services, authentication type is basically while connecting to the web services, once we create and expose a web services and how you want to secure a web service. Using none means it's no anyone can access, no security. Basic means you will be applying the username password. Client certificate means you might be configuring X client so that only that particular client can be able to configure it. Similar to that client certificate. Other one custom means you can, if you want to define your own API manage authentication strategy, you might be implementing that customized strategy using some additional custom functions. Now you need to write customized jar files. You need to refer that one. And gateway is basically earlier there is an called external provider. External provider option is there. Now that renamed to gateway. So external provider is it's basically you will be defining other kind of a strategy. I'll show you this one. Now external means replace, change the name external to gateway. And just remember that. So we'll see those things build. So now let's create the API components, and we will see these two options: customizing endpoint URL and logically grouping the services. We already have the couple of services. Let's go with those services. You can see how flexibility we'll get with this one. Click on new component. Drop down, select API component. So earlier there is only one component is there. So earlier only one API type component is there, that is called API component only. Now what with this new version, what they did is they separated the API service and API proxy. See basically what you might have understand generally the proxy term means. See what exactly the main difference is. API type API service means this is what exactly whatever we discussed so far. We can use existing web service server connector processes that can be manageable with API component to expose a different set of APIs. So REST over data. So when it comes to it means even hosted whatever the background services that actually take the response and giving taking the request and giving the response, that is also hosting in Boomi. But when it comes to API proxy means basically generally proxy in the sense you are just routing the request. You are not hosting the actual service. Maybe for maybe security purpose, some other purpose, what they will do is you'll be Boomi is using as a proxy here. So when client access hit the Boomi request, client hits the Boomi, Boomi will just route the request to the actual web services. So that web services will be deployed on somewhere else, not on Boomi. Whoever is hosting that service, it's just an as a proxy. Earlier, these options were used to manage in this API component only. Whether these options are able to manage how whether you want to use as a proxy, whether you want to configure it. So that now they separating segregated into two things. Now we'll use this one. Let's say we'll just something like that customer service create. First, we'll see one by one. We'll do some configurations and we'll test it. So something like that. So then we'll try to enhance those things. So first thing what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and configure the first. So first any one or two endpoints. Import an endpoint. See, as of now, we can just configure the basic information. API title. Once the API is published, right? API is published. You wanted to see how what's the name you wanted to see that. You can just say that customer service. Maybe as I mentioned, the versioning, right? Versioning, right? Can also be customized. You can write V1 1.0. Anything specified definition, you can use. Something you can just write some basic information like what exactly your service is. So that way whoever is looking at some idea what exactly the service will be. So you can just mention the API path as I mentioned, right? Customize endpoint URL. This is what exactly I mean the customizing endpoint URL. You can just mention that services. You can just says that start slash not required, it will be appended. So this is basic things to and host name and port number what it is been publishing on the visible on the Atomsphere shared web service server endpoint URL. Advanced settings is if you want to pass any some dynamic headers and you might be using that is for routing purpose. Yes. Now let's save it. Now import endpoint. As of now, we didn't see rest and so nothing we see, right? Now we'll go with import and so you see how many options you use it for you just want to create it. If you just click on create new process, what it will do when you click on next, right? It will itself create a one process that automatically set the start set web service server connector all the things. With this Boomi only will generate the some dummy process with the start shape web service server connector and all this thing will do. If you just click on next, right? See what is the process name you want to. So based on that, when you click on finish, it automatically creates, Boomi only creates a process. Okay, imports an external service file. External service file is basically, like, if you are using, if you are working on REST services, and uh, you might be come across this one, a Swagger file. Okay, Swagger is basically a documentation for the REST services. Swagger, SWA. So Boomi, what supports is, you can use the Swagger file. So Swagger file is basically, it's similar. Maybe I can say that how the way how we have digital for SOAP web services, Swagger also is an Swagger also is in similar to that portal, but based on the, it has the complete documentation, like how many services are there, what each functionality, and even you have an option for testing those this services, something like as a postman. So using that Swagger file, also once we import the Swagger file, it will automatically generate your services. Swagger file, what basically if you want to trigger any service, what we need, what is the object or operation, where the service is running endpoint URL, what's the corresponding request structure, request and response structure. All those things will be available in the Swagger. This is for Visual. Maybe you can upload the Visual. This is for existing processes. This is for existing process. Even you can use this one or import process from environment. So already we deployed processes to the environment. Even we can use either of these processes. So since already our process deployed, I'm going to use this one. Select the environment dev. So it will show you the list of process that is deployed. It get all customers. I don't know what exactly this difference is. Okay, request profile means we pass the post data. Okay, we don't want to touch the post data. Let's click on this one. So I just want to use all those things. Okay, oh data. Okay, finish. You can see all the things automatically change it. Let's maximize this. Okay, so in the basically in the published metadata means it will be visible once we deploy the API, will be visible. This is a API path. Basic, what's a basic path? Base URL path. If you go to REST, right? So where exactly you find exact URL means here you will find the exact URL. You can see the two services we added, all customers, customer by ID. If you want, even you can replace that. Even you can want, even rename that one as well. Edit endpoint. You can just mention. Okay, so you can just mention customer. Okay, something like services, customer service. Right? Maybe we'll just change this to. Okay, so now come back to REST. You can see it automatically gets reflected. So this is a customer object you want to do. Inherit value from selected values. So as of now, we are not passing any things for the customer object. So we'll get it everything. Okay, so no other changes. And once you send a request to add this particular path, who or what process is handling with the get option. Once you send a request at this endpoint URL with the get option, what it will do? Request handled by process. Click on edit. It means this is a process that's going to handle the web service request. Input type is none, output type. So whatever the default options will be, whatever you specified in the web service server connector, it will be inherited those things. Even you have an option changing these things as well. You can see you have an option to changing this one as well. Output profile. Click on OK. Okay, now customer by ID. So you can just mention this, click on edit so points. Don't mention something like this, just mention customer, and then you can just mention ID. That's how basically we'll follow the rest, right? So once we have a customer, if you just give the customer object, it means it will retrieve all the customer objects. And if you use the get option, if you specify slash ID means only particular customer only will be retrieved. It's just placeholder. At the runtime will pass values in after slash will pass something 1 2 3 something. You get it? Now no need to change anything. So I'll be, it means if you only see the get option, you will get this process will be handled. If you see any get option with slash as an ID in the endpoint URL, this process will be handled. So in order to handle that, what we did is earlier we have handled with the query parameter, right? So if you don't pass query parameter, but with this query parameter variable itself will not be exist. So instead of that, what we need to do is we need to use parup, because we are not going to pass query anymore. Let's change this one. Hold on a second, we have hard coded this. So we need to pass dynamic process property. This is the value. Let's see this. Since what we change is, since we already expose this web services such a way to accept the query parameter, we just change the query parameter to path parameter. Okay, now let's click on save and close. Now let's review the SOAP services. So this is you can see the difference. WS REST. After that, we can customize this. SOAP, you can see the customize this, and you can see the two operations are there. Get all customers. Even if you want, you can just I can also ready to change these values. Okay. Now OData you can say this. OData basically have two entities, allowable actions. Let's go with this one. OData is mainly it's open data API. If you just see, you have many examples will be there. You can even go through this one. So mainly for REST of SAP, and they are using whenever they're exposing services in SAP, right? SAP success factor, they are using everything in the OData. But OData is very similar to the REST services, but it has a few more structure and everything. Even you can using there is some kind of filter mechanism is there. Using that filter mechanism, you can do something like SQL. What we are doing SQL in where class, even similar to that, you can able to do that. So you can just go through this. You will have if you want to explore this one, right? OData API something, right? So there is some portal will be there. This one. There are few services. This is the correct one, only first one. So you can see that in select what columns you want to select and what if you want to apply any filter, nothing but it is similar to where class. Like all these things you can able to achieve with OData. But what again OData is leverages on the all the HTTP webs, get, post, for all these things. You will have something getting started. So you can see the basic advanced. No? When you click on Postman URL, you will get some link will be there, collection URL. You download this and you can re-import that one. You can re-import, you will get all these options. The way how you, once you download this one, right, and you import it to your Postman, you will see all this. You can try, you can follow this getting started example. You will be able to understand much details about this OData. But one simple terms, what I can tell you is it is very similar to the REST APIs, and it is developed on the post webs, HTTP webs, get post and all the things. But REST webs, OData APIs along with that, it's also supports the filter mechanism and select mechanism. So whereas in REST you don't have option those things. Okay, now we can just rename OData. So in the OData, while you retrieving the options, we have a two entities will be there. Configurations. Why it is showing the customer? Okay, we should not select this one. Generally, right, for the OData, right? For OData, maybe with this service we are not exposing this one. OData has few restrictions, not the Boomi XML profile. OData has few restrictions. Always what OData expects is it has only one root element. Under that, there should be some ID will be there. There should be some ID will be. It's not like again you shouldn't have some more ID. You shouldn't have the one more ID will be there. So maybe we can even just modify this one. First, we will try this without OData and then we will modify this one. So customer, so we need to select the ID, unique ID here. Since we have some child element, again have the customer, it is showing this one. So what actions we need to select is get entities. Get entities, we need to select get entities by key. Get entities means what we have what we have seen is this one. Get entities by key means this one. Okay. Key. One second. It is short, he is asking. You can just select get entity by. Okay. I think it's default, it's taken and we are not asking. Don't have option to change this. Okay, what we can do is we can just select the I'm just making this itself as all the things. I'll remove other elements. I'll remove this one. Edit entity. Okay, so that's what. So instead of making two things, I under one only I made it two. Get entities. Okay, now click on save and close. So generally, right, if you are using anything through a SOAP and all, if there is a conflict between the profiles, you can remove the conflicts. You will get a red color symbol. So since there is no conflict, So when you are publishing it, so basically you should be able to see, you should set the metadata about the who is publishing the service. So if you can pet anything, you can just do, if you have generally right, we'll mention all email ID and everything we can see. I'll just write my name. Just simplicity, I'll just only mention this other thing. Either remaining things, we are not going to mention it. So now we are ready to deploy it. Go for view deployment. So automatically takes and for the deployment wizard. Select, proceed for save and dev. Okay, now first we will see how it looks like. Go to API management. Okay, you can see that as of now, one API is been deployed. You can see the by default it's came for the deployed APIs. You can see the API by name, API by gateway, API by URL. Okay, you just go with the API by name. So you can see that whatever the name you given customer service, API service, it's there. If you want to edit this one, again it will comes by build tab. Okay, because anything editing always will be done at build tab. And now when you click on view details, it is shown that view. Click on view, you can see that it has whatever that I just defined, right? So in the definition, general tab, whatever I mentioned, all the description it is given. On the public, in the last tab, documentation tab, I have given this one. So this one is giving email came from, and you can see the REST API. REST API means it will be here. You can see the Swagger file. Swagger reference available only for REST endpoint that have Atoms API type set to advanced industry. Yeah, we already said that one. Okay, the SOAP, the WO data. Okay, you can see because since we this particular what I can say, the environment has the two atoms, so that you can see the two different URLs will be showing endpoint URLs. What operations it is just showing it. WO data also it is showing only one customer it's showing it. Okay, now let's go ahead. And one more thing, we already showed you the version also. We mentioned V10. So gateway is nothing but it's see basically what they are trying to do is nowadays they are going with latest authentication channels maybe with what I can say, and different authentications are there. Let's say you want to authenticate using your LDAP server. Okay, let's say Boomi is using by some X client, and they want to authenticate always with their LDAP servers. It means basically their organization's username password you should be accepted. That way we don't have an option to specify right here. We don't have an option to specify in the item management. I want to accept that kind of a things. So that's why what they are given is they have given is called an option called gateway. Basically, in the ad control manager inter client certificate. It means whatever you specify, the none all the information will be hosted over here. All this information will be hosted over here. If you specify basic authentication means you are going to create username password here. Right? You're going to it means you are hosting username password. But when it comes to an external authentication provider, you have something like you whenever you want to connect, you want to implement LDAP authentication based, and who is hosting your username and password data? We are not hosting it. Whoever is the LDAP server is there, they want to host that. So when it goes to an external authentication provider, then there is a concept of the gateway, all the things will be coming. So the gateway, everything will be coming into the picture. Whenever you want to do external add external to the external authentication, now we will go for the AT gateway. So for that we will define one more atom for that authentication source. All these things will be there. So plans is basically, this is only available when you change option from internal to the plan. You can restrict the something like, okay, for this API every minute only every minute sorry, not every within 2 minutes I want to accept only two requests. Within 3 minutes I want to accept one request. Some throughput you can mention. So those kind of restrictions you can apply that. So now we'll see the first testing, how we can do the testing one. Then we'll see rest of the things. Let's open the Postman. So before that, let me start my API. Okay, one more before that. Okay, let's go for. It's taking such a long time. Okay, it's taking some time. System is slow. Okay, let's go with this one. So API by name. Let's click on view. If you want to trigger REST services, go with this one. Customer, you want to trigger this endpoint URL. This is the one we need to use it. You want to trigger this one. You want to use this one. Meanwhile, we will also open the Postman. We should see the why this endpoint is giving this URL path is okay. Okay, I think one of them. Let's go to here. Let's change this one also, because this one is not showing, right? Click on save. Let's refresh this API. Let's go to database. MariaDB min cmd ASQLD. Okay, let it run now. Go to view this one once again. Go for REST. You can see the Access Swagger visualization portal. So for REST services, whatever deployed on the Boomi automatically generate the Swagger document portal. So because, as I mentioned earlier, right, Swagger, it's a documentation for the REST services. Even you can even trigger the services from here as well. Now let's go ahead and see this one. So once you click on this, your Swagger visualization portal will be there. From there, Boomi automatically generates a documentation. It's a very nicely manner, and then even you can trigger the services from here, as well as you can Postman. You can see that it offers to what is the description I mentioned here. It's automatically copies there. The what are the publisher information that I mentioned? The publisher information. This is where it mentions. So you have two object here. It have only support HTTP, not HTTPS. Okay, so it has the two things: get customer by IDs web services, and you can see the, if you want to see the structure, what the customer object is there, you can even click on the structures. You can see the Swagger, it's using 2.4. Okay, now there are something common things is there. Now let's go ahead and test these services. How to test these services? Let's click on this one. Let's click on get. Okay, so no parameters for this particular one. Application slash XML response content type. Okay, fine. So then we can just this is how it looks. Sample response will automatically get generated, and you just need to click on try it out. Okay, when you click on try it out, you can see the you should see some option success. Okay, here execute button is there. Okay, you just click on execute, loading. Means basically it's getting triggered web services. It's taking such a long time. This one is no issues with the database. Let's go with data management or data process reporting. Yes, it's triggered. Let's see what's happening. Okay, you can see that it basically curl is a one Windows based commands for it is for curl many purpose. You can use for connecting to FTP, SFTPs, or even you send a request for web services, all the things. You can see the get X is on sending the request URL to this particular one and accept these applications list, and you can see the response it generated. Out of that, I want to take one record, and then I want to retrieve the I want to try the next one. Try it out so that it's asking to pass the password. Okay, you can see it's a mandatory field. Pass the password. Yes. Click on execute. Hopefully this will not work because we did a changes to the web services process, but we did not deploy that change. We change the nothing is come. Okay, it's trying to execute this one, but when it comes to here, if you see this documentation, the property might not have been configured it. You can see its value is not configured it. That's why it's not giving. So now let's go ahead to the deploy process. This one, let's redeploy this. Now let's re-trigger again. You might have seen the customized URL, right? You might have seen the options for how quickly it's easy to customize this. Why did not give me again? Now let's process reporting. One second. You can see that the value has been passed using /400 and the 400 also there in the record here. Let's try for this one. Still it is giving. Maybe what I suspect is the naming convention path parameter. Will be there web service responses. Master data. Okay. Integration ATI connector. Something will be there here. The property name that I might have given is wrong. That's what I'm just suspecting. Go to technology connector. Web service server connector. Okay. Operation. There is something will be there. Somewhere it will be mentioned with path parameters as well. So okay, get ID, yeah, something like this. URL path matching. After matching REST services to API service component, Atom evaluate the URL path and determines the most specific matching route ID. URL path matching. URL path matching is somewhat more complicated. The base URL matching that is given object method can be responsible. Atom can mention both length, same object, and how to retrieve that. At the last example, static path components are more specific matches that parameters path HTTP matching. Okay. Okay, here URI path and HTTP query parameters can be passed to web service listener process execution. Values of URL path parameters that is available in the and each with the prefixes. Those in the REST sequence are available as a dynamic process property with prefix param underscore custom ID. Param underscore custom ID. What is the one we deployed it? Let's go to the process. Build customer by ID. Let's edit this. Correct. And where are we passing this name? Okay, this is basically an ID. Okay, so we just need to pass basically an ID here. So the name how it took ID, right? So we might have given wrongly here. Build, go to build in the API component, right? I might have given ID here in the rest, right? Here I might have given ID here. So if I want to give that run cust ID something, we need to give something cust ID. Based on this naming was derived it. So now we no need to touch this one because only changes in web service process. I deployed that. Let's assume that it should be work now. Still not working. Let's see this process now. Not sure whether any changes required to do in parent process also need to do. Let's see 733 is the last one. Okay, let me trigger it once again. This is the one more one. Still that is not getting populated. Okay, we'll see that one. So that one later. So now we were able to trigger the one part. So even you can even try with the Postman also. You should be able to try this SOAP UI as well. You want to try this one, right? So you have these options and test. You go to test. You should be able to get the actual URL based on visual URL. You use this visual URL and you can test it in SOAP UI. You should be able to test this one. So that maybe tomorrow what we'll do is we will see how we can work with the Salesforce connector. So meanwhile, we better to have you can help me to create one trial account and make ready with that. So tomorrow we'll use that option. Okay, any doubts?
Yeah. Bhima,
Mm-hmm.
can you start other session? I mean, they have a doubt following that.
Okay.
You
Okay,
can
let
end this.
me. Okay, exit.